yeah, I'm going to keep repeating myself. I really like this um, use case as well. And this is one of the use cases I talk about when people ask me, what's my 30-second um, overview of InterGen is the cross-sell upsell opportunities for insurance and the insurance shortfall analysis. Can you explain how that works?
Yeah, so this is something we did after, with our accelerator, and during the accelerator part was MetLife, and we were able to take some anonymized customer data, and what we were able to do is to use that data to show them and where to pinpoint A, who to market to, B, why to market to somebody, and see how much they need to really purchase on the insurance side. As you know, every year all employees get up towards the end of the year and they've got to enroll into their corporate insurance plans, and you got to opt in, and is it high deductible, low deductible, medium deductible, life, health, this, and it always ends up being a tough decision because you don't know how much you should purchase. But if you ask people, they'll say, maybe an insurance agent will say, purchase as much as you can. Well, that's not really the answer. The answer is purchase as much as you need to for the reasons and specific areas you have to. So what we did was we took in an employee plan and we took in some data. Again, it's anonymized. And we were able to use that data and ping it against our system. And what we came back with was a couple of things. We said, look, let's look for all the critical illnesses that these people might have, their employees, over the course of 1, 3, 5, and 10 years. And let's see if it's a big amount. And what we found out over the course between 5 and 10 years was that this one employer, they were likely to have about almost 46% of their employees have more critical illnesses than they were projected based on what they had for insurance. Now, what I mean by that is when they came back with our answer, it ended up being a $20 million shortfall. So think of 1,200 employees and think of 600 of them saying they're going to be in 5 to 10 years $20 million of expenses, and they don't have that in terms of their coverage. So all of a sudden we knew, oh my gosh, whether it was cancer or heart attacks or diabetes or all these different types of diseases, that they're going to have issues. Specifically, we were able to identify the ones that had enough coverage that were good. That was group one. Group two were people that said, hey, if you make a small adjustment, $20 to $30 a month today, over the course of the next 5 years or so, you're going to be okay. And that was group two. And then group three, well, they were the group that really needed the most help. And we found evidence of people where some of their employees, and here's one example, where one employee was going to have about $180,000 shortfall in expected critical illness and expenses. And she makes $25,000 a year. There's no way for her to overcome that type of a problem. Even if we were 50% wrong and it's a $90,000 difference, she still can't make that up. So that becomes a problem for lost wages, lost time. But what about the people? How do you care for them? How do you help them? And by us able to identify that, that allowed them to understand from a hospital indemnity, critical illness, optional life, here's other products we can sell to this person or that person should use to help overcome that difference. And that's massive. That's a huge thing for the employee, for the employer, and it makes everyone look good. It's kind of a win-win situation.
It is, and I thought that was a huge benefit. But I wanted to drill down on one piece of that. When you said 46% of the employees were projected to have more illnesses, is that a probability analysis where you said that they're this likely, this probability likely, or this percentage more likely to get an illness, or how does that work?
Yeah, so that works by the way we look at everything. It's by race and by gender and by where you live and what you do. So if you think about it, the short answer is yes, it is a probability study. And then secondly, upon that, it's probability based on who you are. So if you think about, let's say, look at all the cancers in the world. You build a big bell curve. And within that bell curve, that might affect X million people. But then it's a big bell curve based on, let's say, myself, Native American Indian. So I'm a smaller subsection. And I happen to be male. I'm a smaller subsection. But I happen to work in Texas in financial services. So based on that, I know the core group of people. And then I can say, does this represent a true number in accordance to the national statistics of how many people get cancer based on your age, based on your race? And then we combine that data to say, this is the likelihood of you getting this disease, and this is the likelihood of you having to pay for these, and typically at what age. So that's how we do the grunt work of it, but it does come out and say X million of people, X percentage of this population, here's the propensity number. So we assign that. And if it's greater than 50%, we include it. If it's under 50%, we exclude it. So that way it becomes kind of binary.
Yeah, I think all this stuff is really cool because it's something that's really not being done at any other level. And there's so much value across the spectrum of whether it's wealth or insurance or other aspects to be able to provide this kind of information. But I don't want to dwell too much on that because we've got another use case I wanted to sneak in on this podcast. So can we talk about what I was calling the zip plus four, but it's really you're increasing your predictive capabilities around expanding partnerships with other data providers. And this particular data was anonymized tax information, and how can you use that data to provide more value and more accurate results for some wealth management firms?
Yeah, so that's excuse me. So that's a really good question for several reasons. First of all, data can either help us on a quantitative side or it can help us on a qualitative side. And when we look at the quantitative side, what we're looking at is specifics around actual numbers. And if you think about the averages of where people make money, right? So when does a person make the most amount of money in their life? Well, there's technically two answers. One is 51 for 20% of America, and the second number is 47 for 80% of America. But the differences between the two are massive. The differences are between $160,000 and $65,000. So the 20% of America that makes the most amount of money at their life at 51 tend to have similar jobs. They're lawyers, they're doctors. And so what you realize is they have extra degrees. Those extra degrees are something that took them 4 more years. So if you go back and just push off the earnings 4 years, then what happens is you're able to earn more. Now, what's important about this is if you look at the zip codes and you look at zip code plus 4, you're looking at where people tend to get the most amount of incomes. Well, if they're lawyers and doctors, they tend to be in the larger cities, but that's also where larger costs are. So as we start to realize where people live and what they do, it allows us to quickly get rid of the noise. So if I live in Kankakee or Walla Walla, Washington, or Paris, Texas, the likelihood of me having $1 million salary is less. The likelihood of me having $1 million salary is in the larger cities. So that's standard. We kind of know it, but now we can prove this down to the zip code plus 4. So what I mean by that is the data providers we're looking at give us 150 million households of data, 200 million adults in the US. We have 1,400 data elements that we can start to look at. So imagine being able to say, you don't have to ask 20 questions to understand my financial place in this world. Just say, what's your zip code plus 4? And instantly I can get all the noise, take it away. And now you can start to say, okay, now I have a good subgroup. Now tell me what you do. Now tell me a few more things. And I can actually start building a financial model based on who you are because of where you live. So hopefully that makes sense to you, but that's what we're looking at it for. It's personal, it's business, it's gathering that market intelligence and being able to use that to really drive wealth and asset management.